You're listening to the RetireCoast podcast, where money, business, and lifestyle come together. Join us each week as we explore smarter financial planning, starting and growing businesses, and building the life you want at every stage, from millennials and Gen X to today's retirees.
Welcome back to RetireCoast. We're going to talk today about something that I think a lot of people have given some consideration to. So the title of our podcast is Peace of Mind versus Financial Flexibility. Should you really pay off your home? Now, many of us have heard from all kinds of people, friends, neighbors, relatives. We've read about it that the goal in life should be to own a home, which check mark, that's great. And the other goal is to pay that home off. And so we talk about a 30-year mortgage. So let's say you buy a house when you're age 30. The house would be paid off by the time you're age 60. No, that doesn't really ever happen to speak of. Most people will get a mortgage, they'll refinance that mortgage, get a lower interest rate, maybe they'll pull some cash out over time. But the fact is that it's not something everybody can do. In order to pay off that mortgage, depending on how much you owe, you may have to save a lot of money. And during that process of saving, obviously you're making some money. But when you pull all that cash out to take care of that mortgage and eliminate that payment, you also eliminate the opportunity to make money. And in some cases, maybe you can earn more money than that interest rate you're paying on the mortgage. And that's really part of the point here, that you need to look at the options that you actually have available that can put you in a position to feel just as good about yourself. So I'll just leave you with this short discussion before we get into the dialogue, which is going to be enlightening, I think, for most of you. It's about what I did. And what I've done was good for me, and it helped me, and I used a lot of leverage, and I made a lot of money from mortgaging my house that was paid off, and you can hear about that. It's not for everyone. You may not have the ability to manage the cash this way. In other words, if you were getting a big chunk of cash from someplace, you may be able to spend it rather than invest it. And maybe it's difficult for you to do that. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone wants to do it. So listen to my story. It may sound interesting to you, but it is an option. There is an option to just paying off that mortgage. And paying off the mortgage comes with pros and cons. That's the whole point we're trying to make here. And doing something else with it comes with pros and cons as well. So I hope that the dialogue you're going to listen to will give you some things to think about. Thank you for coming, and don't forget to go to RetireCoast.com, where we have the entire article along with some tools in there and some charts and graphs and things for you to take a look at based on the information that we provided, and also listen to our additional podcasts. And then when you're finished, go back and read some other articles that are similar about retirement. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate the fact that you've decided to spend your time with me and with RetireCoast today.
Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Picture the ultimate American financial finish line. You know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You are standing in your kitchen. You've got a bottle of champagne, maybe the good stuff, maybe just sparkling wine, it doesn't matter. You've got a lighter in one hand and a piece of paper in the other. And that piece of paper is your mortgage.
The classic mortgage burning party. It's almost a religious ritual in personal finance culture, you know.
It totally is. It's the moment you supposedly enter the promised land. No more payments to the bank. You own the roof over your head, free and clear. It's safety. It's security. It's the American dream realized.
It's the goal everyone is taught to strive for.
But you knew there was a but coming, because otherwise this would be a very short deep dive. What if that feeling of safety is actually an illusion?
Or worse, what if that safety is actually a trap that puts your financial future at risk?
Today, we are going to complicate that picture significantly. We are unpacking a comprehensive deep dive based on the writings and experiences of a guy named Bill Anderson. He's an entrepreneur, a real estate investor, and the founder of RetireCoast.
And he's got a perspective that, I have to admit, it challenges everything you think you know.
It honestly kind of broke my brain a little bit when I first read it.
It really does. It flips the conventional wisdom on its head. Most of us are taught a very linear path. Get a job, get a mortgage, pay it off as fast as possible, retire, die happy.
Right.
Anderson is suggesting that the pay it off part might be mathematically and strategically wrong for a lot of people.
And just to be clear, the mission for today isn't to tell anyone, go into debt and be irresponsible. It's to explore the mathematical reality of what actually happens when that balance hits zero.
It's about questioning the default assumption.
And the twist here, and I really love this narrative arc, is that this isn't just a story about a guy who paid off his house and lived happily ever after. It's a story about a guy who paid off his house, hated it, and voluntarily went back into debt to build massive wealth.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive. I mean, why would you climb back down the mountain once you've reached the summit?
Exactly. So before we get into the math, let's talk about the source. Who is Bill Anderson? Because if my broke cousin told me to take out a mortgage to buy stocks, I'd tell him to take a hike.
Right.
But Bill isn't exactly a novice.
No, not at all. Anderson is a serious operator. He built a multi-million-dollar national business, a real service company with employees and logistics, which he eventually sold to a Fortune 200 company.
So he comes from a background of high-level business management. He understands balance sheets. He understands cash flow.
He understands risk. And that's key. He's not just a theorist.
So he's not just thinking about this from his basement.
Far from it. This whole philosophy actually originated from a response he wrote on Quora, of all places.
Quora.
Really?
Yep. It went absolutely viral, millions of views. It just resonated because he was saying the quiet part out loud about homeownership. He's since expanded that into a detailed financial philosophy.
And the data we're looking at is current, right?
They vary. We're looking at data points updated as of January 2026, and it tracks trends all the way from back in 2010 through 2023. So we are looking at a very modern, data-rich picture of the housing market.
Okay, let's jump right into the first big bubble burst. The no house payment myth. I think everyone listening, myself included, have this fantasy. You send that last check to the bank, you get the letter saying paid in full, and suddenly your cost of living plummets. You are living for free.
And that is the first thing Anderson dismantles. He is incredibly blunt about this. He says, and I'm quoting here, there is no such thing as no house payment.
Which feels like a technicality, but walk me through it. I mean, you're not paying the bank anymore. It's not just a technicality. It's a cash flow reality. Even if you fire the bank, you still have silent partners who own a piece of your house and demand payment. You have the county tax assessor.
Right, property taxes, they never go away.
Never. You have the homeowners insurance company. You might have a homeowners association, an HOA, with their monthly fees.
The HOA.
And then you have the house itself, which is a decaying asset that constantly needs maintenance. It's always asking for money.
Anderson actually breaks down his specific numbers from when he was living in California, right? Because I think seeing the actual dollar signs helps drive this home.
He does, and it's eye-opening. At the time, he had paid off his house, technically zero debt to a bank, but he was still writing checks for about $3,500 twice a year for property taxes.
So that's $7,000 right there.
$7,000, then add another $1,000, maybe more, annually for insurance.
So just doing the napkin math, that's roughly $8,000 a year.
Exactly. And he calculated that his zero debt cost of living for that house was about $650 a month. That was the cover charge just to keep the lights on and keep the government from taking the house back.
$650 a month.
And that doesn't include putting money aside for a new roof, which could be $20,000, or a water heater that decides to give up on a Tuesday morning.
So $650 a month isn't exactly free, but here's where it gets psychological for me. He talks about something called escrow shock. I hadn't really thought about this, but it makes total sense.
It's a huge adjustment. Think about how most people pay their mortgage. You pay one lump sum to the bank, say $2,500 a month. The bank takes a slice of that and puts it into an escrow account.
They act as your piggy bank.
They're your financial manager, really. When the big semi-annual tax bill comes, the bank pays it. When the annual insurance premium is due, the bank pays it. You don't have to think about it.
It's on autopilot. It's smooth.
Exactly. But when you pay off the mortgage, the bank stops being your concierge. They close the escrow account and send you a check for whatever's left.
And suddenly, you are responsible for managing that cash flow.
You have to be disciplined enough to save that $650 a month yourself. If you don't, December rolls around, you get a tax bill for $3,500. And if you haven't saved,
you're in big trouble. You're scrambling.
Right. So the freedom of no mortgage actually comes with the added responsibility of becoming your own escrow officer. You can't just spend that extra money you think you have. You have to hoard it for the tax man.
That's a really good point. The monthly cash flow improves on paper, but these huge lump sum liabilities become your problem to manage, not the bank's.
Precisely.
Now, I want to zoom out a bit, because even though Bill's take is, unique, He isn't alone in owning a home outright. In fact, looking at the source material, there's a massive chunk of the country sitting on paid-off houses.
It's a huge demographic trend. The data shows that as of 2023, approximately 39.8% of U.S. homeowners own their homes free and clear, no mortgage at all.
Almost 40%. That is way higher than I would have guessed. I feel like everyone I know is drowning in a mortgage.
Well, it really depends on the age demographic you're looking at. This number is up significantly from 32.8% in 2010.
So it's a growing trend.
It is. The driver here is primarily the baby boomers. They've been in their homes for 30, sometimes 40 years. They bought in the 80s or 90s. They've paid down the loans, and they've seen property values just skyrocket.
Right.
So we have this massive amount of capital, trillions of dollars, lock up in paid-off residential real estate.
Locked up is the phrase I want to stick a pin in, because that is the crux of Bill Anderson's argument. But before we get to the philosophy, we have to talk about Bill's specific story.
Yes.
Because unlike those boomers who chipped away at a 30-year loan until it was gone, Bill's path to being debt-free was, well, it was accidental.
It was a crisis. It wasn't a plan. It was a panic move. It was a necessity.
Set the scene for us.
So Bill and his wife are living in Southern California. He's got a successful career, but the commute is just killing him. Literally hours in the car every day.
A classic SoCal story.
Exactly. So they decide to move closer to his office. They find a new home. Now remember, Bill has sold his company. He has money. But he's an entrepreneur. He understands the value of liquidity.
Right. He doesn't want to tie up all his cash in a house.
No, he wants to get a mortgage so he can keep his cash available for other business deals, other investments.
Which is standard operating procedure for wealthy people. You use other people's money, the bank's money, to buy assets. OPM.
Right. So he applies for a loan.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a credit score in the low 700s, plenty of assets. It should be a slam dunk. But then a clerical disaster strikes.
This is my nightmare. This is what keeps me up at night.
It's everyone's nightmare. The corporation that bought his business was contractually supposed to pay off the company credit cards, which were still technically in Bill's name during a transition period.
Okay. Seems straightforward enough.
Well, someone in accounts payable at this huge Fortune 200 corporation dropped the ball. They missed a payment.
Oh, no. And because it's in Bill's name?
It hits Bill's personal credit report. A 30-plus days late notice. A little red flag that for a mortgage underwriter is a giant screaming siren.
Ouch. And mortgage lenders are terrifyingly strict about that stuff right before closing. One little thing can blow up the whole deal.
They are allergic to it. The financing falls through immediately. The lender calls and says, sorry, we can't give you the loan. But here's the kicker. The seller of the house has a backup offer on the table.
So they aren't going to wait around for Bill to spend months fixing his credit report.
Not a chance to give him an ultimatum. You have 24 hours, pay cash for the house, or we sell it to the other guy.
Wow. So Bill is backed into a corner. He has the cash, but using it was the one thing he didn't want to do.
Right. He has to make a choice. Lose the house he wants and keep the horrible commute, or drain his liquidity and write a massive check.
He writes the check.
He writes the check.
So boom, instantly, he has 100% equity. He owns the house free and clear. And this is the moment where I think 99% of people would take a deep breath, wipe their brow, and say, phew, we're safe. We own it. No more payments.
That is the emotional reaction. That's what society tells us to feel. But that wasn't Bill's reaction.
No. What did he feel?
He describes the feeling as interesting, but definitely not celebratory. He didn't feel safe. He felt stagnant.
Stagnant. Explain that. That's a weird word to use for owning a home.
He looked at the house, and he didn't see a home. He saw a pile of cash that was trapped in the drywall. He calls it dead equity.
Dead equity. That sounds ominous.
It's a very investor-focused mindset. To Bill, money is a tool. It's an employee. It's supposed to go out into the world and work for you to bring back more money.
Right. It should be productive.
Exactly. When that money is sitting in a paid-off house, what is it doing?
Well, the conventional wisdom says it's saving you the interest payments.
True. At the time, it was saving him maybe 4% in mortgage interest. But Bill knew that if he had that cash in his hand, he could invest it in his business or other properties and make 9%, 10%, maybe 12% returns.
Ah, okay. The opportunity cost.
The massive opportunity cost. So in his mind, by having the money stuck in the house, he was losing the difference. He was losing that 5% or 6% spread every single year.
So every day the house sat paid off, he felt like he was actively losing money, not saving it.
Exactly. The lack of a mortgage payment wasn't a gain. The lack of accessible capital was a loss.
Okay, so this mindset, this hatred of dead equity is what sets up the next part of the story, which is just fascinating. We're calling this the strategic pivot because Bill doesn't just sit there and stew about his dead equity.
No, he doesn't.
He makes some moves.
He gets aggressive. And it starts with something he calls geographic arbitrage.
Which is a fancy finance term for move somewhere cheaper.
Knuckles. Pretty much. But he does it with such intentionality. He looks at his life in Southern California. High property taxes, 4 times the fuel costs, high insurance, high cost of groceries.
Everything is more expensive.
Right. And he starts comparing it to the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Why Mississippi? That seems like a random choice.
Well, he crunched the numbers. He realized he could have a better quality of life for a fraction of the cost. Why pay 3 times the property tax if you don't have to? Why pay $6 a gallon for gas if you can pay $3?
It's pure math.
Pure math. So they decide to buy a retirement home in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Now here is where the strategy kicks in. He has this paid-off house in California worth a lot of money. But for the Mississippi house, he doesn't pay cash.
He doesn't, after all that.
No. He uses a veteran's benefit, a VA loan, to buy the Mississippi house with literally 0 money down.
Wait, pause. He has a fully paid off mansion in California, but he finances the cheaper retirement house 100%. That makes no sense to most people.
It makes perfect sense to him. He locked in a mortgage rate around 3.5%.
Why? Why not just sell the California house first and buy the Mississippi one in cash? Be done with banks forever.
Because he learned his lesson from the dead equity incident. He wanted to hold on to his cash. He realized that borrowing money at 3.5% is incredibly cheap, especially if inflation is running at, say, 4 or 5%.
The bank is practically paying him to borrow.
He's getting paid to use their money. If he can keep his own cash and invest it to earn 8% or 9%, he's coming out way ahead.
But then he does something even wilder, something that I think will make our more debt-averse listeners start sweating.
This is the part that really bends your mind.
He goes back to the California house, the one he owns free and clear, the one he was forced to buy in cash, and he takes out a mortgage on it.
He re-leverages. He voluntarily goes back into debt on an asset he owned outright.
But why? He just got out. It's like escaping from prison and then knocking on the door to be let back in.
It's the arbitrage. Again, he realized, I have this mountain of cash stuck in this house doing nothing for me. Yeah. So he went to a bank and said, I want to borrow against this house. They gave him a loan at about 3.5%.
Okay. And what did he do with the cash he pulled out? Did he buy a Ferrari? Did he go to Vegas?
Chuckles. No. He's way more disciplined than that. He took that borrowed money and invested it into real estate investment trusts, REITs.
Okay, let's stop and explain a REIT for a second, because not everyone is a finance nerd.
Sure. A REIT, that's R-E-I-T, is basically like a mutual fund for real estate. Instead of buying one house and dealing with the toilets and tenants yourself.
The 3 T's.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of that, you buy shares in a company that owns massive portfolios of real estate shopping malls, apartment complexes, hospitals, data centers. They collect the rent from all these properties.
And then they pass the profits on to you.
Right. And by law, they have to pay out most of their profits to shareholders as dividends. The ones Bill was looking at were paying stable dividends of 9% to 12%.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. Bill borrows money from the bank at 3.5% interest. He puts that money into a REIT that is paying him a 12% dividend.
Right. So he is making a spread of roughly 8.5%.
He's making profit on money that isn't even his. It's the bank's money.
That's it. The dividends from the REIT are more than enough to pay the new mortgage payment on the house and the leftover cash. The spread is pure profit in his pocket.
That is the definition of making your money work for you. But I have to play devil's advocate here. That sounds risky.
Of course it's risky.
What if the REIT crashes? What if the real estate market tanks and they cut the dividend?
That is the risk. You are leveraging an asset. If the market value of the REIT drops 50%, you still owe the bank the full mortgage amount. Bill was confident in his analysis of these specific REITs, and he had other assets to cover him if things went sideways.
So this is not a strategy for someone living paycheck to paycheck.
Absolutely not. This requires a stomach for risk and a significant financial cushion. But for Bill, the risk of the market was less scary than the guaranteed loss of opportunity from having his money doing nothing.
Stagnation was the enemy.
Correct.
So this move kickstarts his second career. He moves to Mississippi, he's got his liquidity back, and he decides to become a player in the local real estate market.
He gets his real estate license so he can find the deals himself and save on commissions. but he's very disciplined. He forms LLCs with friends who also have good credit, mid-700 scores.
Spreading the risk.
And spreading the capital. They set strict criteria. They put 20% down on every property. They have 5-year exit plans, and the property must generate income better than the stock market averages. No emotional buying.
I want to dive into the actual deals because we can talk theory all day, but the specific numbers on these houses are wild. They really prove his point about the velocity of money. Let's talk about deal number 1, the historic 1910 Beachview house.
This is a great story. So he finds this house. It's a classic historic home, just a 3-minute walk to the beach in Mississippi. It had been used as a vacation rental by the previous owners, so it was fully furnished.
Okay, so it was already set up to make money.
Turnkey. And the deal he strikes is hilarious. He tells the sellers, I'll buy it, but I want everything. Everything. The spoons, the beds, the curtains, the towels, the coffee maker.
Did they fight him on it?
The only thing they took was the dining room table. That was it. Everything else stayed.
That's amazing. Okay, so he buys a turnkey vacation rental. Let's look at the financials. Break it down for me.
Okay, get your mental calculator out. The purchase price was $215,000.
$215,000.
Now, he didn't pay cash. He used leverage.
Yeah.
He put 20% down, which is $43,000.
Okay, $43K down.
Closing costs were roughly $6,000.
Yeah.
But he is a good negotiator, so he got a seller credit of $5,000.
Which basically covers most of the closing costs.
Exactly. So his total cash out of pocket, the actual check he had to write to own this house, was just $44,000.
So for $44,000, he controls a $215,000 asset near the beach.
Correct. Now, fast forward just under 5 years. The market is appreciated, the place is a successful rental, and he decides to sell.
What does he sell it for?
$330,000.
Wow. That's a solid jump. From $215K to $330K in under 5 years?
Very solid. Now, here's where the leverage magic happens. When he sells, he has to pay off the mortgage balance, which was down to about $158,048.
Okay.
He pays the real estate commissions, which were around $19,800.
So take the sales price, subtract the mortgage, subtract the fees. What's left over?
His net profit from the sale was $152,152.
Wait, hold on. Let me look that again. He invested $44,000 of his own money initially.
Correct. $44,000.
And he walked away with a check for over $152,000.
That represents a return on investment ROI of approximately 345.8%.
That is staggering. If he had done that in the stock market, he'd be a legend.
And that number, that 345%, doesn't even include the cash flow. Remember, this was a vacation rental. He notes they were making about $50,000 a year in rental income while they owned it.
$50,000 a year.
Yep. That income paid the mortgage, paid the utilities, paid for upkeep, and put money in his pocket every single month.
So the actual return is probably closer to,
right,
500%, 600%? It's off the charts.
It's astronomical. And here is the aha moment that we need to really sit with. Suppose Bill had listened to the debt-free crowd.
Right, the conventional wisdom.
Suppose he had paid cash for that house. He would have had to sink $215,000 into it up front.
All his own money.
He would have sold it for $330,000. His profit, before taxes and costs, would have been $115,000.
Which is good. I mean, I'd take $115,000.
It's okay, but he would have tied up $215,000 to make $115,000. That's a roughly 53% return over 5 years. By using leverage, he tied up only $44,000 to make $152,000 profit, a 345% return.
That is the power of leverage. He made more money by using less of his own cash. It's an amplifier.
Exactly. He supercharged his returns by using the bank's money. He put his capital to work in a much more efficient way.
This leads us perfectly into the next set of deals, which involves a strategy Bill calls refinance, even though he notes that banks get confused by his terminology.
Right, because to a bank, a refinance is when you replace an existing loan. But Bill uses the term even when he's putting a first mortgage on a paid-off property.
It's essentially the infinite banking concept applied to real estate.
Exactly. It's about recycling the same dollars over and over again to acquire more assets. It's about keeping the money moving.
So walk us through the sequence.
Okay, so after selling that original California house, the one that started this whole saga, he has a chunk of cash. He finds a fixer-upper near the beach in Mississippi. A friend needed liquidity fast, so Bill broke his own rule briefly and bought it cash for speed.
Okay, so he owns it free and clear for a minute. The dreaded dead equity.
For a minute. He puts $25,000 into modernizing it. New floors, paint, appliances. He gets it rented out immediately. It generates $48,000 in rental income in year one.
$48,000 on a fixer-upper. That is a cash cow.
Huge. But Bill, true to form, starts getting hives thinking about all his cash being trapped in that house. He doesn't want debt equity. So once the rental income is proven on the books for a year...
the bank can see it's a good investment.
Exactly. He goes to the bank and says, give me my money back.
He does a cash-out refinance.
Basically, he says, I own this house free and clear. It's worth X amount. I want a mortgage on it. The bank gives him a big check. Let's say 75% or 80% of the home's appraised value. And now he has a mortgage payment again.
So he pulls his equity back out. Now, what does he do with that cash?
Does he buy the Ferrari this time?
Still no Ferrari. He takes that cash and buys 2 more houses. One was a former low-income housing unit, and the other was right next door to it. So he turned one paid-off house into a portfolio of 3 leveraged houses.
Precisely. He financed the new ones with 30-year business loans at 4.75%, which, again, was considered a little high at the time, but he ran the numbers.
And the rent from the tenants more than covered the 4.75% interest.
Easily, with plenty of profit left over.
What's the aggregate math on this 3-house empire? Because it sounds like he's juggling a lot of debt.
He is, but it's good debt. It's debt backed by income-producing assets. He purchased the 3 properties for a total of roughly $341,000.
Okay.
Their current value is around $630,000.
Wow. Okay, almost double.
And here is the kicker. His original cash investment, the money that was actually his that stayed in the deal after all the refinancing and leveraging, was only about $107,000.
So he turned $107,000 into $182,000 of pure profit equity, plus he owns 3 income-generating assets worth over $500,000.
And the key takeaway here is crucial. This growth was only possible because he refused to leave his money trapped in the walls of the first house.
Right.
If he had just stayed debt-free on that first fixer-upper, he would own 1 house today, not 3. He would have 1 stream of rental income, not 3. His net worth would be significantly lower.
It's a powerful argument for leverage. When you lay it out like that, it seems obvious. Use other people's money, get rich, but
yeah,
we have to be balanced here. Leverage is a chainsaw. It's a great tool if you know how to use it, but if you slip, you can cut your leg off.
Absolutely. That is the perfect analogy. Leverage magnifies outcomes. It magnifies gains, as we saw with Bill.
Aww.
But it also magnifies losses. If the market turns, or if you lose your rental income, leverage can destroy you.
The source material actually gives us some cautionary tales case studies that show the other side of the coin. I think these are really important because they explain why so many people cling to the debt-free dream.
Yes. These stories show the emotional side of the math. They show what happens when the chainsaw slips.
Let's talk about Sarah and Bobby. This one hurts to read because I think a lot of people can see themselves in this situation.
It's a very common scenario. So Sarah and Bobby are doing well. They get a massive bonus from work, maybe a tech IPO or a big commission check. A windfall.
Okay.
They have a mortgage at 4.5%, which, in the grand scheme of things, is a pretty decent rate.
Very decent. Cheap money.
But emotionally, they want to be free. They feel that social pressure, debt is bad, risk is bad. They want to post that photo on Facebook of the mortgage burning.
They want the peace of mind.
So they take their entire bonus, all their liquidity, and they wipe out the mortgage.
They throw the party. They are debt-free. They feel great.
They do, for a while. But they made a critical error. They wiped out their liquidity. They didn't invest that money in stocks or real estate that might earn 7% or 8%. They just paid off cheap debt. And they didn't keep a big enough emergency fund.
And then, as it often does, life happens.
5 years later, the economy turns. Bobby loses his job. Sarah gets laid off. Their household income hits 0.
But hey, at least they don't have a house payment, right? That's what everyone says. If I have no mortgage, I can survive anything.
That's the theory. But here's the reality. You can't eat a brick. You can't pay the electric bill with roof shingles. You can't put gas in the car with the window pane.
They are house rich and cash poor.
The definition of it. They have extreme poverty, technically, in terms of cash flow. They had no cash reserves because they used it all to pay off the house. So the bills start piling up. The property tax bill still comes. The insurance is still due.
And they need food. They need lights. What do they have to do?
They have to get the money back out of the house.
The very house they worked so hard to pay off.
Exactly. To survive, they have to go back to the bank and beg for a loan. They have to do a cash-out refinance to get cash to buy groceries. But now, they are unemployed. Banks don't like lending to unemployed people.
And even if they find the lender, the terms are going to be terrible.
Terrible. Interest rates have shifted. The new loan isn't at 4.5%, it's at 7%, Or maybe it's a predatory hard money loan at 10% with a ton of fees.
That is tragic. So they traded a 4.5% mortgage for a paid-off house, only to end up with a 7% mortgage and a mountain of stress just to survive an unemployment cap.
Exactly. The analysis here is that being debt-free cost them their financial flexibility. If they had kept that bonus cash in a boring investment account or even a high-yield savings account,
What could they have done?
they could have used it to subsidize the monthly payments on the 4.5% loan for years. They could have weathered the storm without panicking.
They would have had options.
Right. Debt-free is not the same as financially secure. That is the key lesson from their story. Liquidity, having access to cash, is often safer than having no debt.
That is a tough lesson. But there is another case study, Kathy and Nathan, where the math actually goes the other way, which I think is important.
Right. And this is important because Bill Anderson isn't a zealot. He's not saying never pay off your house. He's saying do the math for your situation.
So what was Kathy and Nathan's situation?
Nathan receives an inheritance, a lump sum, just like Sarah and Bobby's bonus. But the variable here is interest rates. Their mortgage rate was high, let's say 7.5%. Maybe they bought when rates were peaking.
Okay, that's a different ballgame than Bill's 3.5% loan. That's expensive debt.
Much different. So they looked at investing the inheritance. They talked to a financial advisor who said, well, a safe conservative investment portfolio might return around 7% over the long haul.
So it's a wash. Or even a slight loss. 7.5% debt cost versus a 7% investment gain.
On the surface, yes. But they dug deeper. They realized that paying off the mortgage is a guaranteed return. If you pay off a 7.5% loan, you're guaranteed to save that 7.5% in interest. There is no risk.
Whereas the stock market.
That 7% return is speculative. The market could drop 20% next year. It could be flat for 5 years. It's not a sure thing.
So in this case, paying off the debt was the safer and smarter play. The guaranteed return beat the speculative one.
Exactly. They paid it off. And the expert analysis supports this. In a high-interest environment, a guaranteed return of 7.5% often beats the volatility of market. It improved their monthly cash flow immediately and let them sleep at night.
So it really comes down to the spread, the difference between your debt cost and your potential investment return.
That's the core of it.
If your debt is cheap, like 3% or 4%, leverage is your friend. Keep the debt, invest the cash. If your debt is expensive, 7%, 8%, paying it off might be the best investment you can make.
Precisely. It's not a moral decision. It's not about being a good person for having no debt or a bad person for using leverage. It's a mathematical decision based on the cost of capital.
I love that framing. It takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move into our last big section, risks, rewards, and asset protection, because we've thrown a lot of scenarios at the listener. Let's do a quick pros and cons blitz based on the source material.
Let's do it.
Pro, financial freedom, the sleep at night factor. We just talked about it.
It's huge. We can't discount the psychological benefit. You own the roof over your head. No one can foreclose on you as long as you pay your property taxes.
That's a big as long as.
It is. But it improves your cash flow significantly, which is vital for retirees on fixed incomes who don't want to worry about a mortgage payment every month. It provides a baseline of security.
Con, liquidity risk, the Sarah and Bobby story.
This is the big one. Cash trapped in a house is illiquid. If you have a medical emergency, you can't swipe your front door at the hospital. Selling a house takes months. Getting an EQLOC or a cash-out refi takes weeks, and you have to qualify.
Whereas cash in a savings account
Takes seconds to access on your phone.
risk, inflation. This is a subtle one that I think people miss all the time.
Very subtle, but critical for long-term thinking. Think about it. If inflation is running at 5% and your mortgage is fixed at 3%, the bank is effectively paying you 2% in real terms to borrow money.
Because the dollars you're paying back are worth less.
Way less. A $1,000 payment today feels a lot different than a $1,000 payment will feel in 20 years. If you pay off that cheap debt early, you are losing that inflation hedge. You are voluntarily giving up cheap money that the bank is subsidizing.
That blows my mind every time I hear it. Inflation helps debtors with fixed-rate loans. Okay, final risk, and this one came out of left field for me reading the source material. Litigation risk.
The asset protection strategy.
Yeah, this is where Bill Anderson puts on his savvy business owner hat. He points out a counterintuitive danger. If you own your home 100%, free and clear, you are a juicy target for lawsuits.
It's a real thing.
Explain that. Why am I a target? I'm just a guy with a paid-off house.
Let's say you get into a car accident and someone sues you for more than your insurance covers. Or a delivery driver slips on your icy driveway. Or your dog bites someone. If a plaintiff's lawyer looks at your assets and sees a $500,000 home with zero debt.
They see deep pockets. They see a payday.
Exactly. That is a pile of gold they can go after. A judge can force you to sell the house to pay a judgment. Your safety of owning it outright actually makes you financially vulnerable to outside attack.
That is terrifying. So what's the solution? Because we're not saying stay in debt forever just to avoid lawsuits. That seems extreme.
No, of course not. Anderson suggests a specific legal structure. And a big disclaimer here. We are not lawyers. This is not legal advice. Talk to a professional.
Got it.
But the strategy he outlines involves creating a revocable living trust.
Okay, I've heard of those. Walk me through the mechanics. How does a trust protect me from a lawsuit?
You put the house into the trust, so technically the trust owns it, not you directly. Then, and this is the clever part, you create a friendly mortgage or a lien where you, or an LLC you control, owe the trust money. You file this mortgage with the county recorder's office.
So on public record, if anyone looks at my address, it looks like the house has a huge mortgage on it, even though I'm just paying myself.
That's the idea. You might record a mortgage for 80% or 90% of the home's value. To an outsider, like a predatory lawyer doing an asset search, the house looks heavily leveraged. It looks like there is no equity to steal.
So if they sue me, they look at my house and think there's nothing there for them to take.
Right. Lawyers often work on contingency. They want easy money. If they see a house that is underwater or fully mortgaged, they might move on to an easier target or settle for whatever the insurance limit is. It's like financial camouflage for your wealth.
That is sneaky, but brilliant. It's like putting a beware of dog sign on your bank account.
It is standard asset protection for high net worth individuals and business owners. You own the value, but you don't advertise the value to the world.
We've covered a ton of ground here. The math, the psychology, the strategy, the protection. Before we wrap up, let's hit a couple of FAQs that popped up in the source material. Credit score. Does paying off your mortgage tank your credit? I've heard rumors about this.
It can, surprisingly. It's usually a temporary dip, but think about how credit scores are calculated. They like something called credit mix. A mix of revolving credit, like credit cards, and installment loans, like a mortgage or car loan.
Right.
When you close a mortgage account, which might be your oldest account, you lose that installment loan history.
So the algorithm sees you have less debt, which is good, but punishes you for having less diversity of debt.
It's perverse, but yes.
Yeah.
You might see a dip of 20 or 30 points.
Yeah.
But usually having zero debt is a net positive in the long run, and the score bounces back. I would never make a $500,000 financial decision just to save 20 points on a credit score.
Fair point. And one last question. Can you borrow later? People always say if I pay it off, I can always get a loan later if I need it.
You can, theoretically. You can get an ELOC, a home equity line of credit, or a new mortgage. But, and this is the big flashing red warning light, you cannot get your old rate back.
That cheap money is gone forever once you pay it off.
If you pay off a 3% mortgage today and need money next year, you are borrowing at today's rates. That might be 6%, 7%, or 8%. Plus, you have to pay thousands in closing costs, appraisal fees, and go through the whole underwriting process again.
So once you kill that cheap loan, it's dead. You can never resurrect it.
Never.
So let's synthesize all of this. We have two very different paths. We have the Sarah and Bobby path, emotional safety, being debt-free, but it's fragile when the storm hits. And we have the Bill Anderson path, leverage, calculated, constantly moving, but robust and wealth building.
It really comes down to the tension between the emotional desire for safety and the mathematical optimization of wealth. The tiebreakers, according to the source, are your current financial health, your personal risk tolerance, and that all-important interest rate spread.
If you are barely sleeping at night because of debt, pay it off. The math doesn't matter if you're having a panic attack every time the mail comes.
Correct. Emotional health is part of wealth. But if you are financially stable and you are looking to build generational wealth, you have to view your equity as a tool, not just a trophy. Anderson proves that debt equity is a missed opportunity.
The final takeaway for me is this. Don't let the debt-free badge of honor tempt you into liquidity danger. Cash is a tool. Sometimes keeping the cash and the cheap loan is safer than having no cash and no loan.
Absolutely. Liquidity is options. And in an uncertain world, options are often worth more than a zero balance on a statement.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought, something to chew on that wasn't explicitly in the discussion but feels like the next logical step. Think about Bill's journey. He was forced to pay off his house. He looked at it and he realized he had built a vault.
Good analogy.
A vault is safe, it's thick steel, but it's static. Nothing grows inside a vault. It just sits there. It preserves. It doesn't create.
Exactly.
He made a conscious decision to break open his own vault. He turned his house from a vault into a lever. A lever moves things. It multiplies force. It allowed him to build a portfolio worth hundreds of thousands more than if he'd just sat on that paid-off house. So the question for you, listening right now, is your home a vault where your money goes to sleep?
No.
Or is it a lever you can pull to build a completely different future?
That is the $1 million question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.